So far, the left hand has always played the root of the chord. In this video, we look at how the left hand can also play the third of the chord, and how doing that changes the nature of the chord. When we play the root of the chord in the bass, we call that root position, and when we put the third in the bass, we call that first inversion, and that has a slightly different sound. So in the case of a C major chord, the third is E, and so if we have the E in the bass, that is first inversion. Now, doing that, we can either keep the right hand as it is and have two E's, that's fine. The other option that we have though is if the third is now in the bass, we have an option of taking it out of the right hand. So for example, we can take the soprano up to a G and we still get a complete chord, or we could imagine the soprano joins the alto on the C and we still get a complete chord. Looking at this from another position, let's suppose we start here, so the third of the chord is now in the tenor. Now suppose the bass goes up to an E to make a first inversion chord. We can leave the E in the right hand as well, but we now have the option of taking it somewhere else. So in this instance, I took the tenor down to a C because the E is in the left hand now, and we still get a complete chord. Now that we're starting to use different kinds of chords, I think it's time for us to talk about the notion of parallels. And this is a kind of a rule or convention that governs, it runs through a lot of classical music, so it's important to know. Let's suppose I'm playing a C major chord, and let's say that I want to take the right hand up to another starting point. Now let's suppose that when I also do that, I also decide to take the left hand up to make a first inversion chord. Doing that creates what is called parallel octaves. Basically, the soprano has gone from C to E, and at the same time, the bass has gone from C to E. That movement of parallel octaves is not permitted in this style. Similarly, there is a rule that governs against what is called parallel fifths, and they are very similar. If you remember back to when we first started connecting chords 1 and 5, we did it like this. Now, between the outer voices, we have a fifth, a perfect fifth, going to a perfect fifth. And that movement from a perfect fifth to a perfect fifth is considered parallel fifths, and that is also not permitted. An exception to parallel fifths is if one of those fifths is a diminished fifth, then it doesn't apply. Also, if the whole thing is moving up an octave, an entire octave, then that is also fine. So for instance, say that I have a C major chord here, and then I jump straight up here for some dramatic reason. Now technically I've got parallel octaves and parallel fifths, but that's not considered an issue in these cases. So as you improvise more, you need to just start to pay attention to these things. if you're doing the things that we've been practicing, you're not going to run into these issues too often, but it's still important that you remain alert, because you will have to deal with them at some point. For this improvisation assignment, we're going to take the new things that we've learnt and compose very, very short pieces of music. These pieces of music aren't going to modulate. We're going to come to that in a little bit. But just to recap, we've now got the 6/4 chord, the 4/3 suspension, and we've also got the first inversion of chord 1. So with these added ingredients, we can start to get a bit more variety in our improvisations. So we first do it in the major. In this assignment, we practice the new features of the 6/4 chord, 4/3 suspension, and the first inversion chord of chord 1, and we incorporate them into improvisations in the minor tonality.